What do you get when you have parents that are weak and don't know how to discipline their children, and a bunch of toddlers that never learned their limits and just got away with literally everything? I introduce you to Antifa. I introduce you to the Democratic Party. That's what you get. You get all the little whiny people in college campus claiming that they're trying to build a home here and they need a safe and inclusive area, while excluding people and berating people they don't like, and basically flipping it into a hypocritical nightmare. A dystopian future where they can scream and rant and cry about things that are unfair, get their way, and then use that power to abuse others. It's a magical place. It's wonderful. About as wonderful as a child that needs their ass beat for being a little tyrant. So, there is a principle called the reactive principle. It is a psychological condition, if you will, that every single person has in their entire life. And what happens is, it starts around the terrible twos. You go in 2 to 3, and when you're developing, you try to press your limits. You try to see what you can get away with. You want to expand your freedoms. And the more you can get away with, the more you think you can get away with, and you establish your boundaries. What if no boundaries are set? What if your parents are weak little psychological babies who think in the world that disciplining one's children, they believe the psychological nurture babying that went around for quite a while, right after the boomers, in fact. Well, actually, was it the boomers? Could have been the boomers. I'm willing to blame the boomers. Why not? They seem to have babied their children. You hear about the entitled parents. If you haven't, I welcome you to go listen to the many channels trying to capitalize on reading stories off of Reddit. It's yeah, it's a thing, I guess. But you look up the entitled parents section in Reddit. Go read it over there, rather than listening some jackass read it to you, because they all repeat the same stories claiming that there's brand new. But it's fine. It's fine. No, go listen to those entitled parents. You listen to them because it's entertaining. The 2 to 4-year-olds learn that little limit, and whether or not your parents are good at it, they'll set their boundaries. And then give them a few years. They'll test that limit again. Give them a few more years more. They'll test that limit even further. And if the parents allow them to get away with literally everything and just make excuses for their children, saying they're perfect little angels, there you are. You'll hear some good stories, like somebody playing the Switch on the bus, and the kid demands it, and then the mom comes up and says, "You need to give that to my kid." And that kid now knows no boundaries, can think they can do whatever the hell they want and get away with it. There was a story that Sargon published recently about a woman privilege, where a lady just bashed a beer glass into somebody's face, scarring him for life. And she just got away with it. Suspended sentence. She didn't go to jail for marring a person for life. And this girl lives right next to the guy that she marred for life. Yeah. There's no entitlement there. That girl didn't grow up in a lap of privilege, and then she probably claims, she's a woman, so therefore she's oppressed. I wouldn't doubt it. It's in the UK. But the reactive principle rather. This principle is a thing that carries through you through life. I want to explain it a little bit. So, as I've said, the terrible twos are a great example of this. Well, in teenage years, it comes out as rebellious behavior against one's parents to see how far you can press those limits and expand your personal freedoms. In fact, whenever personal freedoms are challenged, the reactive theory becomes present and clear. There's a few other examples you can think of. where run it in your own life, actually, if you want to. And you can see where this theory takes hold. Anytime that you've pressed your freedoms and somebody stands up and says, no, you really, really can't do that. And maybe the easiest example, which is, it's more for safety. People kind of realize it, but it's still a suppression of freedoms, is speed limits. Who actually follows them? Those are limitations, laws that have been put in place. You can't go X speed on this street. Well, most people go 5 to 10 over. Most. If you follow traffic in Texas, they actually go 10 over. It's kind of crazy. You'll be going 10 over the speed limit and the cop passes you. Yeah, it's yeah. And no lights, by the way. They're just going down the freeway. But you see that in that behavior, and it's slight, granted, but you're still defying a limit pressed upon your freedoms. So, why do you think everyone's bitching about YouTube censorship and the lack of control they have over things happening, especially when it affects their livelihood? All the full-time YouTubers, they're bitching about the suppression of their freedoms on the platform. Because before Susan took over and destroyed pretty much the entire thing, succumbing to the market that is pressuring her, even though she hasn't realized yet, for some stupid god-awful reason, that she is their competition, and the reason why they're dragging her over the coals is because they know that YouTube is their competition. Their viewership is coming here. But they are attacking the people, taking away their power, just like tyrants do. But in reactive theory, what should have happened is Susan should have gave him the big middle finger and said, nah, fuck y'all. You can't stop the machine. This is something that is directly competing. If you don't like it, suck it up. But instead, she's become complicit with the situation, which restricts the freedom. So where do you think the reactance theory goes then? Or principle, excuse me. I keep on calling it a theory. Well, it is a theory. But it goes to the YouTubers. Everyone that's suppressed by these new rules. Everyone that's been banned. The people kicked off Patreon for doing things outside of their platform, even though their terms of service say otherwise. Which, by the way, should be a legal precedent to sue the living shit out of them for breach of contract. But, all they have to do is change the terms of service, then ban you retroactively because they can. Which I also think is illegal in certain countries. I don't know. It'd be interesting to challenge. I'm not a lawyer, but to me it seems like that would be something that you could do, because you retroactively are applying rules that you applied today. That I haven't even seen an employer do that, to say the least. But I digress. That'd be something interesting to explore. But you see these people, the people like me, for example, where YouTube changes algorithms, its rules and whatnot, and now my channel dies in the ether because no one can find it. I do a poetic reading of AOC's tweet on white supremacy. What happens? It's buried 5 pages beneath CNN, ABC, NBC, and so on and so forth. If Susan was smart, she would kick all of them off of our platform. They are not independent YouTube creators. Those are corporate bitches that just use YouTube to try and get that extra viewership. You ever notice that most of those things get 0 views? Maybe a couple thousand? Supposedly have millions of subscribers? But really they don't? Yeah. It's because they're frauds. It really comes down to this. Antifa, the left, all of them are the ones that think they are the helicopter mothers of everyone else. They think they can tell us what to do, how to be, how to behave, what we can and cannot say, what we can and cannot do. The natural reaction, the human reaction, is tell you to go fuck yourself. You don't get to tell me shit. You are not in charge of me. I am an adult. I do not need your permission to say whatever the hell I want. Now, whether I do or don't is dependent upon whether or not I want to piss you off. And I went over another video about the N-word and its power. That is a prime example. Depending on the context, I may say it. I have before. I don't give a shit. What happens to me? It depends on the context. It depends on who I say it with. Because that word has power over people. Weird power, too. It shouldn't. But I digress. You think that reaction to what we're doing, Patriot Pair showing up, and the constant demand for these people to pull their head out of their ass, is abnormal, but in fact it is a normal behavior, and it needs to continue. We're not just pressing our freedoms, you're trying to restrict our freedoms, and we're telling you, fuck you. You will not restrict our freedoms. And in some cases, which has been notated throughout history, the more you try to repress and suppress, the more reactive it becomes, up to and including civil war. So there's a line that usually is drawn when blood is shed, blood comes back. I wish the French would learn this because Macron has yellow vest protests going up one end and down the other, and it's still continuing. Yet they are refusing to fight back. Hong Kong protests have gotten bloody, where one of the cops got shot by an arrow of all fucking things. They're not allowed guns. They are apparently allowed bows and arrows. Use what works, I suppose. But when you're killing people in the streets because you don't want their rule, you don't want their communism, that's the natural result. That's all I have for now. I was going to talk a little bit about the impeachment hearing, but that is also truly the reactance theory in play, in a way. I'll explain it later. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
The class is finished today.